Welcome back as we discuss the wonder of the Bible. We're talking about Father Abraham today. And as always, we're using the Lexham English Bible. You can find a link to it in the description below. And we will be asking this question again. What does this story reveal about the nature of Yahweh's interaction with people? And as always, the answer is, it's amazing. It's weird out there. It's a really weird world. We live in a weird world. But not all of it is weird. Some of it is non-weird. Weird is defined as Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. And interestingly enough, this is actually a result of the gospel. We'll get into that. So what does it mean to be weird? A weird society is one that is pro-society over interpersonal relationships. So for example, a if a husband, a man, commits murder, his wife in a weird society may see that as very anti-societal behavior, and so she divorces him and turns evidence against him. In a non-weird world, that would never happen, or it's unlikely to happen anyway, because the relationship and the complex web of relationships says that it would be completely unthinkable. Another example, in the way they view the world differently. There's differences. The UN um, deals with parking tickets, right? And so there are very few parking tickets issued to diplomats from weird societies, Western nations. And when those parking tickets are given, they're always paid. In the non-weird parts of the world, they have lots of tickets, and those tickets get into the millions of dollars over time. It's it's just huge. And it's not a question of law and order. It's that in the relationship structure of non-weird societies, the people at the top, the leaders, you don't give them tickets. Why would you give them a ticket? They're exempt. They are separate. And you would never expect a police officer to give a ticket to a family member. He wouldn't do it. And nobody would say, well, that's corruption. They would be like, of course he wouldn't. You need a different cop to give the ticket because that would just be wrong for him to give a ticket to somebody he's related to. There's this focus on self-achievement over family clan achievements. The um, I might describe myself as a Christian husband, a father, an IT worker. And I put these classifications on me that define me and the things that I have done and who I am. In a family clan, they do this differently. Um, I think the simplest example is Israel, Jacob, when he goes to Egypt. He says, my fathers before me were shepherds, my sons are shepherds, I'm a shepherd, we are shepherds. And there's this idea that it's not about him, it's this is what my clan is. We are shepherds. And we don't talk that way. We don't say these things because, in a weird society, everybody grows up to do their own thing. It's not defined by their family what it is they're going to do. There's a focus on abstract principles. We're very much about uh, splitting things up, classifying things, whereas in the non-weird world, it's much more about the interworking relationship between things, nature and people and animals and whatever it is. But they're less likely to classify and more likely to focus on the interworkings between things. You, if I said a house, you might think, a ranch, a single family home as a ranch, or a split level, or a mansion, or maybe it's an apartment or a townhome or a condo. That's how the weird mind kind of approaches a house. Where in the non-weird world, they're going to be more focused on the relationships in the house, within the house, the relationships of the house to its neighborhood, where it fits around the clan and who lives around me and what that relationship looks like. It's They're going to view it very, very differently, and not on these structured uh, divisions and lines. The last one, the interesting one, right? It's cousin marriage is forbidden, and I don't. The cousin marriage. This one is kind of brought in as a touchstone because it was a pivot point prior to the church banning cousin marriage. This marrying within the clan helped weave a tapestry of relationships within the clan, and it kept the clan together. Romeo and Juliet, Hatfields and McCoys, these people stuck together because their identity was within this group. And it was driven that way through this intermarriage. When the church banned it, people were forced to go out and marry outside of their clan, which broke down the clan divisions and started creating nuclear families that are now an interweaving of different relationships, different cultures together. And it was the linchpin that began to topple, in Western nations anyway, the non weird way of thinking, the non weird way of life. So, why are we talking about weird and non weird? Because I find it's really hard to understand the patriarchs if I don't process, if I can't see the world from their viewpoint. There's just a lot we miss because we think about the world differently. And another wrinkle in there is the idea of nomads. You know, there's the world started with nomads, right? After the Tower of Babel, everybody moves out as groups and they migrate and they set up camps. But early on, they're going to be following the grasses and the seasons. Seasonally, they're going to be moving around to take care of, to feed the animals and eventually plant crops and do all kinds of stuff. But they're going to develop tribal lands, and this idea, they become this family clan. And again, you go out far enough away from everyone else, and your only um, your only source of clan growth is through marriage, birth. Uh, the clan becomes survival. You're not out on your own. If the clan doesn't survive, you don't survive. And we see this clan structure all through the Bible, right? So, um, Abimelech, son of Gideon, Gideon has 70 sons. One is from this lady over there on the side in Shechem. And after Gideon dies, his 70 sons were helping him judge Israel. Abimelech goes to the people of Shechem. He's like, hey, look, you can be judged or ruled by all these other guys, or you can make me king. And you want me, right? Because I'm family. My mom is a part of this town, was a part of this town. And they're like, yeah, you know what? You're totally right. Let's kill all the rest of them and let's be ruled by the person who's a part of our clan. Samuel anoints him, and Saul's like, who am I? I'm just the son of a small unimportant family in the least of all the tribes of Israel, and he defines himself. I mean, he's not poor, right? He's got donkeys and he's got servant and, maybe not wealthy, but he's not impoverished. And yet he doesn't define himself for who he is and what he's done. He defines himself as his relation in the rankings of a small family and a small clan. Rehoboam, son of Solomon, they all come to crown him king, and they're all like, "So, what kind of king are you going to be? We want you to lighten the tax burden that Solomon, your father, had done." He's like, "No, I'll make it harder." And what I find interesting is that the split happened along tribal lines. The 12 tribes of Israel split up by tribe. This clan idea, the clan is everything. The people stay within their clan, generally. You understand? And so life in a clan is interesting. You're irrelevant as an individual. Unless you're the leader, you're pretty much just, you're born and you're told, you're given a job, and you do what you're told to do. You as an individual are not relevant. You are a person a cog in the machine, if you will, whose job it is to see the clan succeed. Life in a clan, everyone works. We see Sarah working, we see Abraham working. There's a lot of people. The thought about the clan is you don't inherit. It's not like, you accumulate a bunch of wealth in the clan and then you a bunch of wealth and then you give it to your kids. In a clan, you are stewarding in a non-weird world. You are stewarding the surplus of the past for the benefit of the future. You are literally a link in a chain. And you view yourself as a link in a chain. Just as um, Jacob says to Pharaoh, my father was, and my kids are, and I am too. We're just this thread through history. And because the clan is everything, right? The survival of the clan matters because without it, you die. Uh, Celibacy is illegal in many parts of the ancient world. Not having kids, not producing, not expanding the clan, this this is a cancer. You become a weight, a burden on the clan. And so producing offspring is not just required, but it is a great honor. It is one of the greatest ways for you to help the clan grow. Not having kids, it's a shame. There is one person who really stands out in the clan, that's the patriarch. And to him, loyalty is required. And this isn't like tyranny. I don't even think, in many cases, I see obvious cases in the Bible where it's not always true, but in many cases, you're loyal to the person because of their role. The only thing that matters is that role. And you follow this person, particularly if you're in the nomad, right? You're going to follow this person as your leader because it's his job to ensure the tribe, the clan survives. He's going to lead the clan places and everyone, to feed the animals, to make sure there's water and there's resources and they have shelter. It's his job to take care of this. He's like the CEO of the clan. He's also the priest. So a lot of these families, and whether it's the nomads of through history or it's even the families in Rome, Greece, we see the same behavior. Each family has their own gods and their own rites. By the time you get to Rome and Greece, you're going to see a lot more structured processes, religious practices. But you move more onto the nomadic world, and while they may worship the same gods, there's going to be distinct differences. And the patriarch is going to be the priest of the clan. He's going to lead the clan in their religious practice. And he would have a son who is his firstborn, who will become the new leader of the clan, the new priest of the clan. So it's very important that the patriarch have an heir who would take on this all important role of running the clan. This isn't just, maybe I want to be the firstborn or not. Like, the weight of destiny lies upon your shoulders. This is what you're going to do. Um, so, let's get to Abram. Yahweh said to Abram, "Go out from your land and from your relatives and from the house of your father to the land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great. You will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and those who curse you I will curse, and all families of the earth will be blessed in you." There's a promise. Yahweh has a plan. He said, "I will restore the relationship that was broken in the Garden of Eden." There is a snake, a serpent slayer coming, and he has chosen Abram to be the one through whom that blessing would come. This call seems to have happened in the way you read it in the Bible. It seems to be that he's in Haran and then Yahweh comes to him. Maybe that is true. But Stephen tells us, the first martyr in Acts, tells us that while he was in Ur, before he made it to Haran, uh, that the God of glory appeared to our father Abraham while he was in Mesopotamia before he settled in Haran. So whether this is just he were getting ready to set out from Haran and I'm telling you what happened in the past, or this is a second version of it, a second appearing, I don't know. Either way, what we do know is that when uh, Abram lived in Ur, down here on the right, he received a call from Yahweh to go forth. And so they're going to go. Abram and Nahor were going to go with their father Terah up to Haran. The third brother died probably sometime right after he gave birth to, or he fathered Lot. Unclear. It happened somewhere in Ur. So Lot is going to travel and be kind of the ward, it seems, of Abram. They go up to Haran at the top, and there Terah dies, and Nahor decides to put down his roots. And then Abram will go down here through Palestine to eventually Egypt and back up through Palestine again. And a couple things stand out to me as we think about all this. Stephen says that the God of glory appeared to Abraham. Now I think of appearing, a rabbit appears in a hat, the sun appears over the horizon. Um, when we use the word appearing, we typically are talking about something visual. And so it's raised a question to me when I see this word appearing through Scripture, the Old Testament. Is this a pre-incarnate manifestation of Christ? Is he actually seeing some form, some person who is Yahweh, as he would definitely do later we'll talk about next week um, with the Sodom and Gomorrah incident. And it appears that he did appear to Abram, and he speaks audibly to him. Now, here's the thing: Abram is an idolater. Why pick him? Melchizedek is alive. Melchizedek is king of Salem, which would be Jerusalem someday on Mount Zion, the city of God. Why not pick Melchizedek, who worshipped Yahweh? Why go for this idolater in Ur? There's some part of this. Did Abram just look at this and like, there's lots of gods we've talked about? I certainly believe that many of these were fallen angels who were setting themselves up to be gods. They're not actual gods, but they are real beings. And Yahweh is just one of many, maybe. And Yahweh says to him, I'll do this. And there's some part of him that says, hey, here's a way to get rich. Be family, be wealthy, have lots of property. I can get on board with this. I don't know. Bible's not clear. But we do know that it will be many years before he fully trusts God, before he fully trusts and is counted for salvation. So he's following, but he's not totally on board yet. Does this remind you of Romans? That while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. He loved us and pursued us even though we were still enemies. We have this picture of one who is an idolater, who's been called from his idolatry and into a walk with Yahweh. So let's take a look at this story arc. Courtesy of the New American Commentary. Great commentary. This is my adaptation of their structure of this. We have the test of Abram. It's going to start and end with the test of Abram. We're going to see the abductions of Sarah, the stories of Lot, our covenant ceremony, and the covenant sign. And intermingled in here will be the birth of the two sons, one a child of effort and one a child of promise. So this first part, test of Abraham, leave everything. This is going to happen in stages. He leaves some of it, and it wouldn't be till later when Lot finally departs that this test is complete. But it's here. And I love, the first thing that comes to my mind, as soon as I start reading this or thinking about this, is Mark. And summoning the crowd together with his disciples, Jesus said to them, if anyone wants to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life on the account of me and of the gospel will save it. For what does it benefit a person to gain the whole world and forfeit his life? For what can a person give in exchange for his life? For whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will also be ashamed of him when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. So, just like we are called to leave our life of sin in our world and follow and give up things to follow Yahweh, so Abraham is done. So this test, he's about 75, or he's 75, according to Moses, and he leaves the country of Ur. He's going to, um, and so the family's going to leave. This is foreign concept to us. Think of this nomadic tribe. We saw that picture, and it was a big, long distance they're going to travel. And they're going to be many times far away from civilization. And it's not just a couple of folks. I always think of it like the flannel graph as a kid, right? 2 or 3 tents, a couple of people, and some sheep and whatever. But by the end of Abram's life, there was at least hundreds. There was probably 1,000 or more people. Remember, he fielded an army of 318 to rescue Lot. This was a big group of people with a lot of animals and a lot of tents and a lot of possessions. This is like a whole town walking across from one country to the next. And they're gonna leave. And once they get to Haran and Terah's dead and Abraham and Sarah and his nephew Lot, the servants, cattle, and possessions, they start walking. And Moses says, and Abram took Sarah his wife, and Lot his nephew, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and all the persons that they had acquired in Haran, and they went out to go to the land of Canaan. There's a bunch of people. Can you imagine being in Canaan in the north end and seeing this group come over the horizon? It'd be impressive. So he's left his father's house, and skipping ahead a little bit with the part about Lot, because the verse says, the promise was, and I will bless those who bless you, and those who curse you, I will curse. Because Lot supported Abram, Yahweh blessed him, and Lot was growing. He became wealthy in his own right. Eventually, the clan would be so large that they would have to separate, for practical reasons. There just wasn't enough grass and water and things in the region to support both groups. Abram, and in so doing, when this happens, Abram completes the first test. He's finally separated from all of his attachments to the past. And Abram, he passes it. Now, one thing I want you to notice as we go through this, Abram doesn't have the Bible. He doesn't have examples to look to like we do, like we're doing today. He doesn't have any of these things. So Yahweh is guiding him all along the way. Sometimes we know that we see parts of that. We see what's going on because he tells us. Moses tells us about it. Other times I think he doesn't tell us, and we just have to figure it out. Or we just trust it. One of the ones that stands out to me is, how did Abram know to go to Canaan? He's in Haran, he can walk in any direction. Why that way? My guess, in some way, Yahweh is pointing him in a direction. Might be subtle, it might be explicit, but it is happening. Yahweh is actively guiding him. So, test one, leave everything. Now, we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about the abduction of Sarah. This is going to be somewhere 77, 78. It's a little unclear. But a couple things, Abraham struggles with his trusting Yahweh about Sarah. What does it say about the culture when he's afraid that he'll be murdered and his wife taken? Well, we can't know how Abimelech and Pharaoh would have responded. What I can say is we do have at least one example where a king took a wife and murdered the husband. Anybody remember David and Bathsheba? Of course, there was Dinah, great-granddaughter of Abram, who would be forcibly taken by a local prince, and then seems like the processes take and then send a dowry later, after the fact. Um, and some other things. They've got this ruse they've set up to protect the clan leader. Would they have set this ruse up if he wasn't the clan leader? I don't know. But he is the patriarch. Remember, there's that loyalty and protect. This is the most important role. Uh, the other thoughts on as we go forward here. There's this promise given to Abram, but there's not the promise given to Sarah. Not at this point in time. It's just, Abram, you go, and I will make you a great nation. Now, I don't, as a Christian in a weird society, I naturally see the promise to Abram as the promise to Sarah. But that's not how they viewed the world. It's not uncommon for somebody to have multiple wives, and not for bad reasons. Um, in a clan, if you end up wiping out a whole bunch of men, if some other nomadic tribe or raiders come and a bunch of guys are killed, you got these ladies standing there like, you have to raise up kids to replenish the clan. And in fact, we see Yahweh saying to do that in Leviticus. It's not a breach of the marriage covenant. It's, yes, the rule is the way the pattern is one man, one woman for life. But even Yahweh says there are places where this is not exclusively that way. And so Sarah's not mentioned, and it's quite possible that they accepted that there was this alternate path. The part about this that I have trouble with, this first abduction, is that Abraham went to war to rescue Lot. He didn't to rescue Sarah. That's the part that really just is repulsive to me. But I have to acknowledge, I don't understand how they saw the world, and this may have, even Sarah may have accepted this as the right way to behave. So I want to be careful in judging that. There is no condemnation of the journey to Egypt. Some people are like, oh, he should never have gone to Egypt. God condemns Egypt. He hadn't yet. So there was a famine in the land. So Abram goes down to Egypt to dwell as an alien there, for the famine was severe in the land. And he says to Sarah, look, I know you are a woman of beautiful appearance, and it shall happen that if the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me, but let you live. Please say you are my sister, then I will live on account of you. And it happened as Abram came into Egypt, the Egyptians saw the woman, and that she was very beautiful, and the officials of Pharaoh saw her. They praised her beauty to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken to the house of Pharaoh, to his harem. And he dealt well with Abraham on account of her, and he had sheep, cattle, male donkeys, male slaves, female donkeys, and camels. All these things are given to him. And then Yahweh afflicted Pharaoh and his household with severe plagues on account of the matter of Sarah, the wife of Abram. Then Pharaoh called for Abram and said, what is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she's my sister, so that I took her to myself as a wife? Now then, here is your wife, take her and go. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and then sent him and his wife and all that was with him away. We see some things in these. Abram just totally lacks trust in Yahweh's protection. And Pharaoh's men see Sarah's beauty, and they tell, and he decides that it's a beautiful woman. She needs to be in my harem. She's not married. And so he takes her and leaves a dowry fit for a queen. This event impedes Yahweh's plan, right? I mean, Abraham and Sarah didn't understand the details of the plan, but this was nonetheless an important detail. And she's supposed to bear a son for Abram, and she can't do that if she's married to Pharaoh. Because Abraham is untrusting, he set up this foolish scenario. Yahweh steps in. And this is something we see over and over through Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and how Yahweh has a plan, and he's going to stay involved in ensuring that his outcomes happen. Things aren't left to chance. He will shepherd his promises to fruition. Does he appear in a dream? We don't know. Abimelech gets a dream. Um, one of the things is that Pharaoh is approaching this as a matter of she's a pretty woman, I want her, whereas Abimelech seems to be more about I want to I want a marriage alliance with Abram. Um, maybe he appears in a dream. Maybe Pharaoh is meeting with his gods in some sort of trance or religious ceremony, and Yahweh comes to him, kind of like the witch at Endor, right? And bringing up not the familiar, but Samuel, and Yahweh's like, "You're in trouble." But there's these plagues that get dropped. Whatever happens, Yahweh maybe not say anything. He just drops the plagues, and Pharaoh's going to his priests and his gods and saying, "What's going wrong?" And they're all saying, "It's this woman. She's actually married, and you're under punishment from her god." Whatever happened, I do think it'd be. I think there's some level of hilarity in this. Um, in how Pharaoh found out. But the thing is, he is humiliated. He is suffering from these plagues. He is angry, and he thrusts them out of Egypt. Um, you know, Abram and Sarai would have a child that brings life to the world. Their descendants would bring life to the world. Abraham and Sarah apart means doom for the world. And so there's this punishment. Like, there's these plagues. Don't stand in the way of God's will. Everything about Abram and Sarah revolves around these two ideas, faith and this promised serpent slayer. Really cool. Let's talk about Abram and Lot and their parting ways. I don't think I'll ever understand Lot. He he knew so much. Um, he was a part of all of this. He was blessed. He gets a chance. He's now I've got to leave, and he immediately thinks about his wealth and growing it. He runs right to Sodom and Gomorrah, these plains that are well watered and great, and camps out next to them. At some point, he's going to end up in the city. I don't know why. Maybe it was because he was captured and thought, well, now I'll live in the city. Maybe his wife was from Sodom. There's questions about that. Um, I don't know. But he gets captured. He should never have been near these cities. He should never have been captured. If he had followed the pattern of Abram, he would have been fine. We're not going to read the whole story today of what happens here, but for time's sake. But there's these four kings. They raise their army. They conquer Sodom and Gomorrah and all the other cities of the plain and make them vassal states. And after 12 or 13 years, they decide we're not going to do it anymore. We're not going to keep sending stuff to these four kings. Tribute. So they rebel, and the next summer, or whenever they season of war, they four kings raise their armies again, and they go marching, and they conquer more cities, and they capture loot. And when they're in this campaign, when people die, you don't simply replace them. Or if they're wounded and can't fight, you can't replace them. Everybody is just, you drag the wounded, you drag the slaves, you drag all the loot along, and they come up to the plains, and these five kings of the plain have organized their armies to conquer the four wounded and battered kings. And the five kings of the plain lose. So it comes to Abram, and he says, um, uh, um, he says, oh, well, he grabs his 318 soldiers and they go out and they defeat these four kings. And then he rescues Lot and he talks about Melchizedek. And now the first test is complete. Lot is separated out and there's no recorded interaction between them ever again. Now, it's not relevant in scripture that they ever talked again. So this is the completion of the first test and the first half of the Lot story. Um, Now I want to talk briefly here as we're wrapping up the covenant ceremony, Yahweh's oath. Abram, so this happens right after, and there's a fear, and for time we're not going to read some of this, but there's this fear of retaliation that seems to be there. Abram says, you know, I so he's been out. He left Haran 5 years ago, thereabouts, and he's just conquered these four kings, and he's got to be thinking, all these people around here are looking at me. They're going, dude, this nomad who just kind of wandered in, just wiped out these four kings. This dude's a little scary. What kind of response are people going to give back? And Yahweh, just like he did when Noah gets out of the ark and he says, I'm going to keep nature the same, the times and the seasons the same. Don't panic, there will not be another flood. Yahweh comes and says, don't be afraid. There is going to be, he says, I will be your shield and your protection. He says, I am your shield and your reward shall be very great, in a vision. Then there will be a covenant, which we're going to look at. Here. Um, Real quickly, I don't have an answer to this. Maybe you can drop something in the comments. If you have an answer, what is a vision? It seems to be that he's indoor, the vision begins, Yahweh takes him outside, shows him the stars. He then slays animals and waits for nightfall. Then he falls into deep sleep and God spoke with him. This whole day is wrapped as a vision. I always figured visions were either something that happened when you're sleeping or you're in some sort of trance-like state, not looking at the world around you. But apparently, visions are malleable. Something interesting to ponder some other time when we have time. And then Abram says to the Lord, O Yahweh, my Lord, what will you give me? I continue to be childless, and my heir is Eleazar. He says, look, you have not given me a descendant like you promised. And here, remember, our household is my heir. Behold, the word of Yahweh came to him, saying, this person will not be your heir, but your own son will be your heir. He brought him outside. He says, look to the heavens and count the stars if you are able to count them. He says, so shall your offspring be. And Abram believed in Yahweh, and he reckoned it to him as righteousness. This, after 5 years of following Yahweh, is the moment when he says, I believe you. And Yahweh said to him, I am Yahweh who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to possess it. He says, O Yahweh, how shall I know that I will possess it? A couple of thoughts in this. God said there'd be a reward that included a son, and Abram's doubting him. Yahweh hasn't provided. Again, he's no biblical examples to see. And in this society, the firstborn, like, it's a big deal that the patriarch doesn't have a son. And so it's like, here, I am assigning firstborn to Eleazar. Now he's like, no, he's not your firstborn. I will give you a firstborn. So in his doubts, he's, Eleazar, he will be my descendants through him. Yahweh shows him the stars and says, no, your blood children will be uncountable, just like the stars are. And he caves. Abram caves. For whatever reason, I do not understand. There's no, what's the lead up to this where he just says, I, I don't get it. I don't see it, but I believe you. I believe in Yahweh, the promiser, the creator. And Yahweh reckoned him as righteous. It says, I will give you all of this land. He says, how do I know that? I'm struggling. And he said, the descendants of yours will be aliens in a land that's not their own. They will serve nations. This is the going to Egypt where they'll be slaves and they will come back out. And then we skip the part where they're slicing up all the animals, and says that Yahweh comes through as a fire pot and a flaming torch pass through those. And then Yahweh made a covenant with Abraham. And here's a very important point. Yahweh made the covenant one-sided. Abraham has to do nothing. He says, to your offspring I give this land. And he describes all of it. And Abram, he didn't just say, trust me. He makes a one-sided oath with which Abram has no responsibilities. It's amazing. He's so kind. He just cares for his people. And time passes, about 5 years. Abram and Sarah are not getting younger. And there are no kids, and so Sarah does, what seems perfectly reasonable to her within the context of their society, in their non-weird world. She says, look, I got this servant girl that I really like. Let her be your concubine and produce a child for me, and it will be my child. And so Abram has a child of human effort, Ishmael. We will follow up with Ishmael next week. I want to wrap up with these couple of quick thoughts. Yahweh has a plan to reconcile mankind to himself. And we do everything we can on our part to completely get it wrong. But he intervenes constantly in the affairs of man to bring about his outcomes. He doesn't leave them to chance. He shepherds them through. And I will tell you this, the more I study this, the more I find great comfort in the fact that he is involved bringing about his will to the conclusion he wants.